Bruno Guimarães could fix Arsenal's midfield and force Arteta to change the role of one of his best players. Because if Bruno arrives, Arsenal are not simply adding another talented midfielder, they are adding another player who wants responsibility. Responsibility in the build-up, responsibility under pressure, responsibility for moving Arsenal into the next phase. That sounds like the solution, but it immediately creates a decision. Rice has shown how dangerous he can be when he carries forward, presses higher, and attacks the space around the box. Odegaard remains Arsenal's main creative connector in the final third, and Bruno would expect to influence the ball from deeper areas. All three can play together, but not if all three are asked to perform the same jobs they perform now. Someone has to build, someone has to protect the transition, someone has to attack beyond the ball, and someone has to stay close enough to deliver the final action. So what does Arteta change? Does Bruno release Rice? Does he keep Ødegaard higher? Or does Arsenal create a midfield where everybody wants the ball but nobody attacks the space beyond it? Reports say Arsenal are moving closer to a deal worth around £80 million, but nothing has been officially announced. So this is not a signing announcement, it is a role case. Bruno Guimarães could fix Arsenal's midfield, but who changes role to make it work? The easy answer is to say all three can play together. Of course they can. The harder question is whether their strongest roles can coexist without leaving Arsenal exposed, because Bruno is not simply a holding midfielder who stays behind the ball. Last season, he finished as Newcastle's Player of the Year after producing 9 Premier League goals and 8 assists across all competitions. He wants involvement. He can influence the build-up, but he can also move forward and affect the final third. That creates the first decision. If Bruno starts deepest, who protects the space when he advances? If Rice remains the main defensive midfielder, does Arsenal lose some of the aggression and box threat he can provide higher up? And if Ødegaard keeps dropping towards the ball to help progression, who stays close enough to the attack to create the final action? The issue is not whether Bruno, Rice, and Ødegaard have enough quality. They do. The issue is sequencing. Who receives first? Who moves beyond? Who protects behind the move? And who remains near the final third? 3 elite midfielders can share one midfield, but they cannot all chase the same responsibility at the same time. And the first role Arteta would have to redefine is Declan Rice's, because Rice is no longer simply the midfielder who protects Arsenal. Last season, he contributed 9 goals and 10 assists across all competitions. 7 goals and 8 assists came in the Premier League. Earlier in the campaign, Premier League data also placed him among the competition's leading players for both recoveries and chances created. That combination matters. It shows why pushing Rice permanently backwards would be a waste. If Bruno takes greater responsibility in Arsenal's first and second phases, Rice could begin higher. He could press closer to the opposition goal, attack second balls, carry into open space, and make the late box runs that turn controlled possession into damage. That is the exciting version, not Bruno replacing Rice, Bruno releasing Rice, but freedom still needs protection, because Bruno also likes to move forward and influence attacks. If Bruno advances, Rice attacks the box, and Ødegaard remains high. Who protects Arsenal when possession is lost? That is Arteta's decision. The question is not whether Rice can play deeper or higher. He can do both. The question is which version of Rice Arsenal want to maximize, and whether Bruno's presence gives him freedom or simply makes his responsibilities less clear. The obvious answer is Bruno. Let him stay deeper, protect the center, and release Rice. But that answer is too simple, because Bruno has not built his reputation by behaving like a static holding midfielder. He wants the ball, he wants to progress play, he wants to combine around the final third, and he wants to influence the attack. Last season, he scored 9 Premier League goals and registered 8 assists across all competitions for Newcastle. At the World Cup, he produced 4 assists for Brazil. So asking Bruno to remain behind the ball permanently could waste part of what Arsenal would be paying for. But giving him complete freedom creates the opposite danger. If Bruno advances, Rice attacks the box, and Ødegaard stays high, Arsenal could lose the protection this midfield was supposed to provide. So Arteta's decision is not simply whether Bruno can cover for Rice, it is how much freedom Bruno receives and exactly when he is allowed to use it, because Bruno could release Rice, but he is also a midfielder who will want releasing himself. That is where the balance becomes difficult. And Bruno's freedom does not only affect Rice, it changes what Arsenal ask from Odegaard, because Odegaard's most dangerous work should happen closer to the final third, receiving between the lines, combining with Saka, finding the runner, and delivering the action that turns control into a chance. Even during an injury-disrupted 2025-26 league campaign, Ødegaard had recorded 6 assists from only 15 starts by early May. His minutes were limited. His creative importance was not. That is where Bruno could help. If Bruno takes more responsibility for receiving deeper and progressing Arsenal through pressure, Ødegaard does not have to keep traveling backwards to rescue the build-up. He can stay closer to the areas where his passing actually hurts opponents, but there is a hidden risk. Bruno is comfortable moving towards the ball. Ødegaard is comfortable moving towards the ball. If both drop into the same spaces, Arsenal may gain another controller, but lose the player who should be waiting beyond the pressure. Then Rice becomes the only midfielder consistently attacking forward, and Arsenal's midfield becomes easier to read, so Arteta cannot simply place Bruno beside Ødegaard and expect the quality to organize itself. The responsibilities must be separated. Bruno starts the move, Ødegaard finishes the move. One takes Arsenal through the pressure, the other makes that control dangerous. Because the point of signing Bruno cannot be to drag Ødegaard deeper, it has to be giving Arsenal more ways to keep him higher. But even that clean division is not enough, because Arsenal's midfield roles cannot remain fixed for 90 minutes. Bruno will sometimes move forward, Rice will sometimes drop deeper, Ødegaard will sometimes come towards the ball. That rotation can make Arsenal difficult to press, but only if the responsibility moves with the player. When Bruno advances, Rice may have to hold. When Rice attacks the box, Bruno must protect the center. When Ødegaard drops to help progression, somebody has to occupy the space he leaves ahead. The positions can change. The structure cannot disappear. That is the difference between rotation and confusion. Good rotation gives the player on the ball several solutions. Bad rotation sends everyone towards the same area and leaves nobody beyond the pressure. So Arteta does not need 3 midfielders trapped inside rigid job descriptions. He needs 3 midfielders who understand the rule behind every movement. One supports the ball, one attacks beyond it, one protects what happens if possession is lost. The names performing those jobs can change during the move, but all 3 jobs must remain covered, because Bruno, Rice, and Ødegaard will not become balanced through talent alone. They become balanced when every freedom triggers somebody else's responsibility. And this is where the transfer fee becomes part of the tactical case. Newcastle rejected Arsenal's opening offer, reported at around £70 million. Their valuation is believed to be closer to £80 million. No agreement has been officially announced, but if Arsenal eventually commit that level of money, they cannot be buying another good midfielder who simply adds competition. They have to be buying role clarity. Bruno must give Arsenal a cleaner route through pressure. He must allow Rice to attack without leaving the center exposed. He must help keep Ødegaard closer to the final third, and he must make the midfield rotation safer, not merely more complicated, because at elite money, he improves the squad is not enough. The question is whether he improves the structure. If Bruno, Rice, and Ødegaard still move towards the same spaces, if the transition protection remains unclear, and if Arteta still has to ask the same players to solve every phase, then Arsenal have paid a premium price without fixing the real problem. That is the standard. Elite money must buy more than talent. It must buy clearer jobs, safer rotations, and a midfield that becomes harder to press without becoming easier to counter. Otherwise, Bruno does not solve the decision. He makes it more expensive. And there is one player this entire debate has ignored, Martin Zubimendi. Because Arsenal already have a recognized number 6. He played in all 38 Premier League matches last season and scored 5 goals during a strong first campaign in England, so Bruno would not be arriving to fill an empty position. He would be entering a midfield that already has a controller at its base. And that creates Arteta's hardest decision yet. Does Zubimendi remain the number 6, with Bruno moving higher as an 8? If that happens, does Ødegaard lose his place in Arsenal's strongest midfield? Or does Bruno take the deepest role, reducing Zubimendi from a regular starter to an expensive rotation option? There is also a third possibility. Rice and Bruno operate as a double pivot, with Ødegaard playing as a pure number 10. That could give Arsenal power, press resistance, and creativity, but it would still leave Zubimendi outside the preferred 3. This is why Bruno cannot be judged only by what he adds. Arsenal must also judge what his arrival displaces, because signing an elite midfielder is easy to celebrate. Explaining why an existing elite midfielder now plays less is the real decision. And this is why Bruno's possible arrival cannot be described as simple squad depth. At the reported price, Arsenal would be recruiting him to play a major role, but Arsenal already have 3 major midfielders, so Arteta would face 3 possible versions of the team, and every version sacrifices something. The first is continuity. Zubimendi at the base, Rice driving forward, Ødegaard creating near the final third. That midfield helped Arsenal win the league, but if it remains Arteta's first choice, why spend elite money on Bruno? The second version places Bruno deepest. Rice keeps his freedom. Ødegaard stays close to Saka and the attack. That may offer more progression and creativity from the base, but it turns Zubimendi, a player who featured in every league match last season, into the midfielder who loses the most. Then there is the third version. Zubimendi controls, Rice brings the power, Bruno operates higher. That midfield could be aggressive, physical, and difficult to press, but Ødegaard's creativity and connection with Saka would be missing. Arteta could try to select all 4, but that would require a different shape, and possibly 1 fewer attacker, so there is no painless solution. Bruno's arrival would improve Arsenal's options, but it would also force Arteta to declare what his strongest midfield actually is. Because 4 elite midfielders can share a season, they cannot all occupy 3 starting positions in the biggest match. Somebody's role changes, somebody's minutes fall, and that is the decision hidden behind the excitement. And that is why this cannot be presented as a simple upgrade. Bruno would improve Arsenal's options, but he would also force Arteta to redefine what his strongest midfield actually means, because the best midfield against every opponent may not be the same 3 players. Against an aggressive press, Bruno's ability to receive under pressure could become essential. Against a deep defensive block, Ødegaard's creativity near the box may matter more. When Arsenal need control and protection, Zubimendi can anchor the structure. And when the match demands power, pressing and late runs, Rice becomes impossible to leave out. So perhaps Arteta's answer is not one permanent first-choice midfield. Perhaps it is different combinations for different problems. That would give Arsenal something title-winning teams need, the ability to change the solution without lowering the level. But rotation only works when the roles remain clear. Players must know why they are starting, why they are sitting, and what the team needs from them when they enter. Otherwise, tactical flexibility becomes uncertainty, and elite competition becomes confusion. So Bruno's arrival would not simply test Arsenal's midfield quality. It would test Arteta's ability to choose the right balance for the right match, because the strongest squad is not the one with the most famous names. It is the one that can change personnel without losing its identity. And tactical flexibility creates Arteta's next problem. Not ego, not dressing room drama, clarity. Arteta has already said Arsenal need to increase the competition inside the squad. That should raise the level. But competition only helps when players understand what they are competing for. If Bruno starts against an aggressive press, Zubimendi must understand why. If Ødegaard starts against a deep block, Bruno must understand what the match requires. If Rice is moved higher, the player covering behind him must know exactly when that responsibility changes. The bench cannot feel like punishment. It has to feel like part of the plan, because 4 elite midfielders will not receive identical minutes. They will not start every major match, and they will not all perform their favorite role every week. That is unavoidable. The danger begins when selection looks random, when roles change without explanation, and when competition becomes uncertainty. Arteta does not need to keep everyone equally happy. He needs to make every decision tactically believable, because the strongest squad is not one where everybody starts. It is one where the player sitting out understands what Arsenal gained from the player selected. That is how competition sharpens a team, instead of confusing it. And this brings us back to the title of the case. Bruno could fix important parts of Arsenal's midfield. He could provide another route through pressure, release Rice into more aggressive areas, reduce Odegaard's need to rescue the build-up, and give Arteta another elite solution when the usual midfield route is blocked. But Bruno's arrival would not remove the difficult decision. It would create it, because Arsenal already have Zubimendi controlling from the base, Rice carrying, pressing and attacking space, and Ødegaard connecting the midfield to the final third. Add Bruno, and Arteta gains enormous quality, but he also inherits 4 major midfielders competing for 3 starting positions. Latest newspaper reporting says Arsenal and Newcastle are close to finalizing a flat £75 million agreement. Neither club has officially announced the transfer, but if the deal is completed, Bruno cannot become an expensive player without a clearly defined purpose. Arteta must decide when Bruno controls, when Rice attacks, when Ødegaard stays higher, and when Zubimendi remains the safest answer at the base. The solution may change with the opponent. The reasoning cannot change randomly, because Bruno only fixes Arsenal's midfield if his arrival makes the roles clearer, the rotation safer, and Arteta's selections easier to explain. Otherwise, Arsenal gain another elite midfielder, but make their biggest midfield decision even harder. So here is the verdict. Bruno Guimarães could fix important parts of Arsenal's midfield. He could give Arsenal another route through pressure. He could release Rice into more aggressive areas. He could reduce Ødegaard's need to keep dropping away from the final third. And he could give Arteta greater control over difficult matches. But Bruno does not arrive without consequence, because Arsenal already have Zubimendi at the base, Rice carrying the physical and attacking burden, and Ødegaard connecting the midfield to Saka and the final third. So who changes role? My ruling is this: Rice should become the main beneficiary. Bruno's arrival should allow him to press higher, attack space, and arrive around the box more often. Ødegaard should be protected from unnecessary build-up responsibility and kept closer to the areas where his creativity hurts opponents. And Zubimendi should remain a major tactical option, but no longer an automatic selection for every type of match. Bruno would become the flexible piece, deep against pressure, higher when Arsenal need another creator, disciplined when Rice attacks, aggressive when the match demands more control in advanced areas. That means the answer is not one player permanently losing his place. The entire midfield hierarchy becomes match-dependent, but Arteta must make every selection understandable, because 4 elite midfielders can share a season. They cannot all start the biggest match. At the reported price, Bruno is only worth the investment if his arrival makes the roles clearer, the rotations safer, and Arsenal harder to press without becoming easier to counter. So yes, Bruno could fix Arsenal's midfield, but the player whose role changes most should be Rice. Not by pushing him backwards, by finally allowing Arsenal to use more of what makes him dangerous. The deal is still awaiting official confirmation at the time of recording, but the tactical verdict is already clear. Bruno should not replace Arsenal's best midfielders. He should make their best qualities easier to use. Case closed. For Arsenal analysis that goes beyond the transfer headline and follows the evidence, subscribe to Canon Casefile. The next case is already open.